Welcome to the Real Money Show, the number 18778 silver, and the website guildhallwealth.com. My name is Jeremy Wiseman. I'm joined by Jerry Correia, and we've got silver breaking history, breaking records and breaking history. We're going to get into some headlines out of CTV, as well as some big news coming out of Texas. We've got a billionaire who's been buying silver. How has he been doing? I think that's going to be a good one to look into. But first, again, the number 18778 silver, the website guildhallwealth.com. If you want to get involved in the physical gold and silver market, one of the best ways to do that is to make sure that your product is fully allocated and segregated. Make sure that you're getting serial numbers for your product, that you have access to your product through the vault system if you're looking to store the product. And if you want to have it in a registered account, this is the best way to go. We have a unique vehicle where clients can hold it allocated, segregated outside the banking system, but still within your retirement account. Gold over the last 20 years is up over 700%, silver up over 400%, and this is the type of asset that will perform against dollar devaluations, which, of course, Jerry, we are seeing consistently. And why are we seeing dollar devaluation or the loss of purchasing power is because governments just don't have the discipline. Central banks don't have the discipline to stop printing money and going into debt. We have $47 billion in interest payments every year. How does that get paid? It gets paid by borrowing more money. And they borrow more money and pay out more interest to rob Peter to pay Paul. And you end up with crazy sort of policies coming out of Ottawa. The fact is the dollar, as it stands right now, is not doomed for success. It's doomed for failure. And the consistent march downward of that dollar has been great news for the precious metals, which have outperformed that loss of purchasing power. So to have some physical gold in a portfolio just makes sense as a diversifier. And what's great is silver's breaking some history. Let's get into that, Jerry.
Yeah, both gold and silver are having a great year thus far. We just passed the halfway marker of the year. Both precious metals are up about 27%. However, we're seeing silver now outperform gold, and seeing that happen at the tail end of the first half, this is historic. We're going back a few years now, a few decades, in fact, where, silver tends to lag gold at the start of precious metals bull markets. When we talk about the silver to gold ratio, that's signifying we haven't even entered into a bull market, which is what makes this whole thing exciting to me. And I think my focus, and as many people has started to really focus in on silver. If some portfolios are a little bit overweight on gold versus silver, and we're seeing a little bit of a tide turning and shuffling back into the silver market. So, looking back to the 08-09 crisis, silver was slow out of the gate. It surged 81% in the following 12 months.
When was that?
In 2008, 2009.
Okay.
And then we had the COVID panic and the lockdowns. The silver to gold ratio was around 113. And, where we're at today, just a few weeks ago, Jeremy, the silver to gold ratio is around 99-1. Now we're at 90-1. When we start breaking into the 80s, this is going to start getting really, really excited for silver. And going back to even to this 1970s bear to bull transition, silver lagged gold initially, which is exactly what we saw. But we saw that it caught up and outperformed gold later on in that decade. So this is just the beginning. But we're seeing gold outperform, or silver outperform gold. So, this is just the beginning, and silver is on that launch pad.
So breaking history of first half of the year where silver's outperforming gold.
It's outperforming, and it's also the highest first half, the highest price in a first half for silver in history. So, we're up over 36.80 today, and it's actually defying logic, because the data that came out today, we're recording on Thursday, we had tremendously strong jobs report data that came out of the U.S. They were anticipating 96,000 jobs. out came 147,000 jobs. So what this means from a macroeconomic standpoint, silver's defying strong jobs. When you see strong jobs, market tends to equate that to inflation. Therefore, you have to keep rates higher, negating the interest rate cuts. So on the back of this news, gold, platinum, palladium all took a turn down. Silver's defying that. Silver's actually up over 1% today, approaching that $37. It's actually over $37 in the futures. So the silver market is overlooking this jobs number. It still sees cuts, still sees weak macro numbers, still sees weak US dollar, and interest rate cuts still, regardless, will be around the corner.
Yeah, I think that you get sort of two views. There's the micro and the macro. There's the day-to-day drivers of news, and that could potentially drive markets short term. But then you have these longer looping trends. So it's day-to-day, here's some good news, here's some bad news, but the big picture is $37 trillion in debt, right?
Passing that.
So I like how last week in our interview with Chris Marcus, he mentioned the word efficiency, right? That gold and silver are just not quite that efficient. If interest rate, if inflation goes up 1%, should gold and silver go up exactly 1%? It's not guaranteed like that. But over the long term, you can see those trends aligning. Yeah. But even still, I would imagine that there would be critics of the silver market and the silver price as of right now, even trading in the 36 range, of people. There's an expectation, Jerry, that, well, where's the breakout? When's the breakout going to happen? How come, it's not going to meet those expectations? What would you say to someone who's looking at it and saying, yeah, well, but I don't see the breakout?
Well, right now, according to the Barron's, silver right now is outperforming. It's outshining all global markets with a 10% June rally. So if you're looking elsewhere, obviously gold and silver, when you think of them, and thanks to the central bankers of old who have claimed that silver and gold are archaic, and they're archaic relics, and especially with some financial planners who won't include gold and silver, the campaign has always been to shun gold and silver, to put them on the sideline. But how can you avoid looking at headlines when everyone's looking for gains and chasing yield in a risky market? Barron's wrote silver posted an impressive 10% return in June, outperforming stock and bond markets in Japan, Europe, and the U.S. Historical data suggests this momentum can continue, as July has been a very strong month over the past decade for silver. Two key factors are driving silver gains. First, with gold up over 43% over the past year, investors are turning to silver as an alternative precious metal. Especially we see this in India as well, and places in Asia. And secondly, industrial demand, of course. How can you ignore the demand?
I think it's really interesting to note that the market was up in June. There is an expectation of sell in May, go away, or that the market should be quiet through the summer months. And truth be told, even I didn't expect the market to continue to be rising the way it is, quietly, almost in a stealth fashion over this period of time. Typically you do see some sort of sell-off in April, early May, and then kind of a couple quiet months. And often, I'm just going off of my own kind of experience, you'd start to see some movement towards the end of August usually. But this is in fact unexpected. So I think for anybody who is looking for the big move, I think you want to kind of like how pets can predict earthquakes.
Yeah.
Right. Or
sicknesses.
Yeah. Or some people, they're saying, there's certain signs to look for. If there's going to be a heart attack, you could see some signs coming early. This type of movement in the market so far this year, and even over the last month, could certainly, I would tack that up on the wall as indicators of maybe I shouldn't be ignoring this market, or maybe I shouldn't be poo-pooing this market the way I have in the past. Maybe I should start looking at these symptoms as, maybe this market is about to crazy turn, and then look at, 90-to-1 ratio. Let's add that into the mix. And you'd start to have a pretty good case for why I'd want to be involved right now.
A lot of distortions and even bewildering the market. The sell in May and go away. It's bewildering major bank Barclays in the UK. We're also seeing these distortions in the stock markets as the stock market is expecting now interest rate cuts. They're expecting stimulation and, give me some of that more of that hopium, because that's what really drove the stock markets. Barclays market headline is the Barclays market euphoria indicator hits bubble territory as speculation soars. People chasing yield, investment houses, family offices chasing yield, speculating into the stock market. A key market sentiment indicator from Barclays is flashing warning signs of excessive speculation in the stock market. The bank's equity euphoria indicator has risen to 10.7%, well above its historical average of 7%, and matching levels seen during previous market bubbles. So, this is coming down to diversification. And where are you going to really park your money without rolling the dice, Jeremy?
Well, it's been money for thousands of years. It's never dropped to zero. And it is money. And according to yet another state, it is money. So we're going to get into that in the next segment. In the meantime, if you'd like to get involved in the gold and silver market, you can check out our website, guildhallpreciousmetals.com. That's our e-store. It's a great way to introduce yourself to the physical gold and silver market. You can log on, pick up a tube of maples, maybe a 10-ounce bar, and maybe even start to acquire on a regular basis. Very easy. Can do it from the comfort of your own home. Can do it in the evening. You don't have to go anywhere and do anything. You can just book it, and then we'll ship it to you. It's very much like like an Amazon.
Right to your door.
Right to your door.
The closest Canada Post Office to your location.
And very easy to start getting involved in the gold and silver market. So we recommend checking that out. And you can even set alerts. So if you're looking for, I'm looking for a $35 price. If I can get that price, I want an alert because I will be a buyer at that level. And that's a great way to get a discount. If you're looking for discounts in the market, set up an alert. Try to get your price when the market dips. And hopefully you get it. Hopefully you can get it. The number 18778-SILVER, the website guildhallpreciousmetals.com to book some physical gold and silver and take physical delivery. Jerry, unfortunately, Canada is less safe these days. You see a lot of news about crime, and you have conversations with your family, you have conversation with friends, and you just feel sort of less safe to do certain things, unfortunately. And I was talking with a client recently, lives in a good neighborhood. He was away, back door got shimmied, and they stole some gold.
Wow.
It wasn't physical gold, it was like bars. It was it was like a keepsake that was made out of gold, and it was taken. And the thing is that you don't have to put your wealth and your future at risk. You can actually use a vault facility to store your physical product, and it doesn't have to be everything. People are always price conscious, but putting some into a depository can make a lot of sense for several reasons. One, it allows for, most importantly, ease of liquidity, right? Let's say I sold a property. I'm not looking to buy property just yet. I'm looking at prices. I'm seeing prices could be coming down. I'm going to keep looking, but I want to have cash available. But I don't want it just sitting in the bank, not making anything. There's still inflation after all. So I could buy a kilo of gold, for instance, and have it stored in the vault. Very low cost of doing business to store that product. Very low premium to get involved in a kilo bar. But when the time comes and the agent says, hey, we're going to need a down payment within 48 hours. You cool with that? Yes, I am. because you've stored it in a vault, ease of liquidity. Pick up the phone, call your dealer, call Jerry and say, hey, I need to sell that bar. No problem. So ease of liquidity is a great reason to use a depository. Another reason is for security, for safety. Do you want to store all of that at home? Even with the biggest safe in the world, sometimes you don't want to store all of your product all at once. Now, I know that goes against what a lot of YouTubers will say. They'll say, you got to keep it in your possession. Yeah, these guys are nickel and diming, okay? They're not always dealing with hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of product. So it can make sense to diversify where you store. Maybe you store a little bit in your safety deposit box. Maybe you store a little bit in your personal home safe. And maybe you store a certain amount at a vault. And it could also make a lot of sense, especially if it's silver, because it weighs a lot. Are you going to stop everything you're doing to go and sell it? It can be quite a hassle. So the beauty of utilizing a facility like Brinks is that your product is safe, it's fully insured, ease of liquidity, access. Something to consider if the security issues are starting to become a worry. You don't have to worry. You can use a vault facility to secure your product. Now, Jerry, a couple months ago, and I should say the number 18778 Silver, the website guildhallwealth.com to learn more. A few months back, there was a gentleman who purchased a ridiculous amount of silver. He bought almost $500 million worth of silver back in March. A billionaire who, by the way, we calculated just over the break here that he's up $65 million since March. He's up over 10%. Can you tell us about this gentleman and the reasons why he decided to buy silver and not gold?
Very, very timely. This gentleman, his name is David Bateman, billionaire tech founder, Jeremy. Wise, savvy. He's a former CEO of Entrada, which is a property management company, a software company. And he started buying precious metals, significant amounts of precious metals, primarily initially as a hedge against potential global monetary system collapse. He was looking for counterparty risks, protection against counterparty risks from excessive money printing, runaway deficits, even not trusting the financial system. But we saw three key precious metals purchases started back in March of this year, March 26th, back-to-back days, March 26th and then March 27th. He amassed about 14 million ounces of silver, primarily from the COMEX, which he took delivery of, valued at the time $438 million worth. His reasons for those purchases, he stated, was fiat currency collapse, which is the case. When you have our currencies losing about 10 to 12% versus gold and silver, it is clear that our currencies are dying, leading to a distrust in the global financial system when our governments are simply just gaslighting us with false data coming from, StatsCan and even, our own inflation numbers here. Gaslighting. The inflation number here in Canada is not 2.6. So this is growing and growing distrust. And he cited two things, the Basel III Endgame and the Great Reset. So ultimately, it's about physical assets for him. He is definitely all in precious metals. He's close to $1 billion in precious metals, specifically after yesterday's purchase.
And just to make sure that we've got this right, he's not doing futures. He's taking physical delivery of this product?
Yes, it's a big, massive move in the physical precious metal space. No ETFs. He believes in the silver squeeze. He's one of the proponents of the silver squeeze movement, because when you have the derivatives market, and we talk about derivatives all the time, there's derivatives on almost anything, but I think the largest derivatives market is the silver market, because we know all of the industrial usages. The biggest end user we'll get into is the military. It's obviously very important, and you're using artificial derivatives to create artificial supply. But when you take delivery of that, well, those derivatives can fall drastically. We can see Exter's pyramid play out in real time,
which is an inverted pyramid created by a central banker to show how banking works, which is gold is the bottom of the pyramid, the peak of the inverted pyramid, and it kind of demonstrates what JP Morgan said, which is gold is money, all else is credit. By the way, did you see MicroStrategy's Michael Saylor put out a post? He made himself look like JP Morgan.
No.
And he said, Bitcoin is money, all else is credit.
Really? Wow, that was very brave. Very brave of him to say that.
Well, I mean, when we talk about the Bible, which we're going to get into,
Yes.
I think that we'll talk about a little bit later, and just kind of hold that thought about Bitcoin being money and everything else is credit.
Well, the bottom of the inverted Exter's pyramid, which, as you mentioned, it illustrates the risks inherent in each type of asset class. And according to John Exter, who was the former Federal Reserve governor and Harvard guy, what it shows and why he made this chart or this inverted pyramid, according to him, during a financial crisis, investors move out of the less liquid debt-based assets at the top and move into the more liquid physical assets, primarily physical gold and silver, which he considered the safest of all assets.
Okay,
so money flows into these finite assets, which can just, we'll see the silver squeeze at that point.
And Bateman putting his wealth on the line, effectively, to buy physical silver, it's already panned out for him. He's up over 10%. He's made $65 million on his $450 to $500 million original purchase back in March, but he wasn't done in March. So he's not done.
He stepped in yesterday, July 2nd, the day after our Canada Day. He came in and announced 800,000 ounces of silver, 7,000 ounces of platinum, 4,300 ounces of palladium, all bolstering his holdings. He described it as an all-in on precious metals. He's anticipating a huge move in precious metals, driven by what we're seeing in the economy, instability, all the macroeconomic stuff. It's shifting. We talked about this last week. It's a teeter-totter. We're sort of back and forth from geopolitical, shifting back to macroeconomic, interest rate cuts, ballooning markets. And again, these key reasons: monetary system concern for Bateman, distrust in the fiat currency system, silver squeeze 2.0, and Basel III regulations is normalization of seeing gold and silver being reintroduced into the marketplace. So it's obviously here to discuss. We're here to discuss this and how we can do this for your portfolio as well. One thing we love to do is more than just number. You're more than just a number. We're not here just as a retail advisor or broker in precious metals. We want to know the story. What is your game plan? As Jeremy mentioned before, people are looking at properties. We're looking to, buy the dip. The markets are coming down in the real estate markets. So, but you're sitting in cash, 200, 300,000 waiting for your down payment. However, the cash is eroding in value. What do you park it in? That kilo bar is perfect. So we have these conversations, but initially, for me, you want to get that Mad Max scenario out of the way. We want to tailor your portfolio just in case the lights go out. Hyperinflation can happen because Voltaire said it best. All fiat currencies unbacked by gold and silver eventually go to their intrinsic value of zero. They're unbacked. There are no weights or no measures in our currency today.
Well, I find it interesting as well with this billionaire who's been buying silver, Bateman, that it isn't just one factor. So he's named, there's market volatility. He's named inflation as a problem, geopolitical stuff that could be going on, and a massive changes happening. He mentions Basel III rules. So there's just a lot of things going on and a transition period. And as we earlier said, some silver holders are waiting for an event. What we'll often say is it's not an event, it's a transition. Mm-hmm. It's a process. And moving to a gold standard potentially, or moving to a remonetization of gold and an acceptance of physical gold and silver as a means of real money, as a place to store value, is not a new concept. It's actually a very, very old concept. And holding physical gold and silver can be a very stress-free and a very conservative approach to how you handle the value that you've created through your life. You've created this retirement portfolio. How do you protect it? Well, you protect it with old money, right? That's kind of a new term that's out there, right? Being old money, looking old money. Well, why not hold old money, right? In your retirement account.
Excellent. Yeah.
The number 18778 silver, the website guildhallwealth.com. Jerry, you're just saying something about David Bateman buying silver, but he's not buying gold.
It's interesting because, he cited the Great Reset and Basel III Endgame. So Basel III just came into effect July 1st. It was a hard start in the U.S., so it's formally recognized as Tier 1 capital, as money. It's the best collateral out there. And it has to do with gold being a tier one asset, but he has no gold. So I think this normalization will impact silver. He sees this transition as well, and industrial demand.
Maybe he'll convert to gold later. That's what a lot of people do.
That's a good switch.
Okay, so this was, to me, really great news. Texans are now allowed to pay using gold and silver. This was an article that recently came out. Texans are to be allowed to pay with gold and silver for everyday transactions after Governor Greg Abbott signed House Bill 1056 into law. Now, we already just saw Florida do something very similar. For Real Money Show listeners, they have known that this is something we've been tracking state by state. They seem to be getting rid of taxation and sort of moving towards this type of legislation over time. The article goes on, Texans will be able to use their gold and silver holdings stored in the state bullion depository for payments through electronic systems such as mobile apps and debit cards. I think that's great. I think that's interesting. I'm not sure how exactly they work the logistics on it, but I'm interested in looking at that. Okay, this was in the article. I thought, oh my gosh, Jerry's going to get a kick out of this. Why it matters. The decision by Texan lawmakers to recognize gold and silver as functional money, here you go, marks a significant experiment in alternative currency in the United States. What?
What experiment?
What does that mean, Jerry? It marks a significant experience in alternative currency.
Well, it could be, at first glance for the gold bugs, gold has been money for thousands of years. Silver has been money for thousands of years. You translate the word silver in 14 different languages. It means money. In Mandarin, it means safe house. So, back off, your talk of experiment. But what is actually experimental now? And they are researching to bring back, the logic of this statement is, we are seeing a blending of just last few weeks ago. We talked about this on the show, the Real Money Show 3 weeks ago, that the Treasury is researching stablecoins. The Treasury Department, we know, are trying to defend the U.S. dollar and the dumping of U.S. Treasuries, which is the very fabric of the United States money system. They have to rescue that Treasury. How do you do that? Well, with a blending of fixing the Treasury with gold and silver, number one, and pledging it through a depository onto the blockchain using stablecoins. And just a couple weeks ago, they were researching the stablecoins, which I think need fixing in and of itself, because the USD tether, to me, is it really backed one-to-one with a U.S. Treasury? It's never been audited. Doubt it. But if you back it up with the real thing, with real gold and silver, you then have I think your experiment is successful.
And I guess with the stable coins, the trick there is that there's a limited supply, right? So you don't have the issue of the disciplinary issues that you have where central banks can print a lot of money.
Yeah.
This article goes on to say, for decades, the U.S. has operated on fiat currency, and while federal law already recognizes U.S. gold and silver coins as legal tender, their actual commercial use has been rare and logistically challenging. I actually don't think it's really logistically challenging to use actual physical coins and physical money. Where it became challenging is when inflation got out of hand, and it's just, we've seen this one before, right? Well, it's for ease of use. We want to make your life easier. And by making your life more convenient, we're actually trapping you in something, right?
Yeah.
If you think about credit cards, if you think about credit cards and debit cards and all of those things, all of that costs the merchant money. So all of this money that's in your community every day is being skimmed off the top, right? If you were using cash, that same $50 bill would be remaining in the community over and over and over again. But once you start using those debit machines, the banks are actually skimming off the top those user fees.
They're clipping.
So you end up with less than the $50 in your community. People don't notice that because it's of the convenience, and of course we're not headed back. But this article seems to say, well, the status quo has been for digital money for so long that gold and silver seems unrecognizable to us because it's no longer status quo. The number 18778-SILVER, the website guildhallwealth.com, because the status quo is going to be physical gold and silver. You can see the signs, the fact that Texas is moving back towards that.
Florida.
And Jerry, I thought you might like this. The supporters like Dozarazio says the move provides Texans with added protection from inflation and expands financial autonomy beyond federally backed dollars. The Republicans also cited the Bible in his efforts. Schroen, a Houston-based news outlet, quotes him as saying, "If you go back to the scriptures in Genesis 2, it gives you a reason how God intended us to be able to effectively engage in commerce, and that reason was, in the land of Havilah I placed the gold." What do you make of that?
I think that's 100% correct. It is biblical. It goes back thousands of years, and part of it, I think you're also going to be looping in the answer to intrinsic money. I think we often misdefine, or we don't define this intrinsic. Well, where does this intrinsic come from? Obviously, I think it comes from the Holy Scriptures, and for me personally, it also answers Voltaire. I keep bringing that quote up: paper money eventually returns to its intrinsic value of zero because it's unbacked. As Proverbs, Solomon wrote in Proverbs 11:1, false weights and measures is an abomination to the Lord. So things that have no weight to it, unbacked currency, there used to be a weight to the currency. Well, you take that away, there's no weight. It goes to zero. It goes into abomination territory.
So in some ways, Michael Saylor was being blasphemous with his recent Twitter post or X post, where he made himself look like JP Morgan and said, Bitcoin is money, has no weight. Unit of exchange maybe, but no weight. That's money somehow, and everything else is credit.
Interesting.
Right? Let's just say time will tell.
Time will tell.
And if Voltaire is right,
it usually does.
And if Voltaire is right, then I think the stablecoin route, which has been the case for cryptos since the beginning, it's been fiat. System, stablecoin system, crypto cool. Let's back it with something so that it's actually something we can use functionally and not just speculatively. If you want to hold physical gold and silver as part of your portfolio, you can give us a call. We'll show you how to get involved in the physical market. As well, holding it in a registered account has been fantastic for so many of our clients. We're seeing clients, Jerry, in the last 5 years who are up 130, 140% on their metals. And it's been really great to see that kind of progress over time. So congratulations to everyone involved in the market. You too can get involved in the market. 18778-SILVER, the website, guildhallwealth.com. If you've missed a show, please check us out on YouTube. Follow us on X. We're also on Rumble and Spotify, and would love to have you subscribe and make sure that you're not missing any of our shows, because I don't know, I think it's pretty good info. I know you do a lot of great research, Jerry, to bring us some stuff. And one thing that you and I both were noting this week was, I think it was CTV came out with an article last week, and they said Canadian average wages outpacing inflation according to Statistics Canada's reports. Now, I saw that. I said BS right away. That doesn't make any sense to me. To me, it would be, well, if people have been begging for wage increases for years and then you finally give them some wage increases, but you give them 10% over the next 5 years or something like that, the Stats Canada could say, well, look at that, wages are up. But it's not taking into account that inflation has been up for the last decade, especially the last 5 years. But if we're going quarter to quarter or year to year, well, then, of course, wages have been outpacing inflation because everyone just finally got their raises in 1 year.
Mm-hmm. Wow, something to celebrate. People are not. This is another one of those headlines that just completely gaslight individuals, gaslighting Canadians. Just before Canada Day, elbows up to that one. This is another reason why you're not being honest with your citizens, with the people of Canada, and especially with the senior citizens. I dropped some nuggets last week and exposed how seniors, and who many are veterans across Canada, are being simply robbed by the CPI inflation numbers. This is silent theft, and silent no longer. Canada's inflation math is simply cheating the senior citizens. We're seeing housing, food, energy soar, wages barely keeping up, but that CPI number is staying flat at 2.6. If Canada still used the metric, the 1979 method of calculating inflation, Jeremy, old age security payments would be significantly higher. They can afford medicines, food. Again, if you cannot honor your elderly, you're not a nation whatsoever. I mentioned last week the Japanese proverb, those who respect the elderly pave their own road to longevity. Even a Chinese proverb, a family with an old person has a living treasure of gold. You're honoring your elderly. What are we doing? We're robbing ours. This is totally wrong. And, if we utilize and use the 1979 method, the inflation measurement goes from 2 point whatever percent it is right now, and it goes to 8 to 9%, Jeremy. That's the real world rate of inflation. And, that's why we talk about gold and silver as honest money. It's unlike manipulated statistics coming right from the mouth of Stats Canada saying, oh yeah, Canadians are very happy that the wages are going up. This is a form of.
Do you think they're happy that their insurance and their food costs and their energy prices and everything else is going up? Like we do transfers, right, from institution to institution, and usually they're like $80. $50, $80. I did a transfer the other day. The outgoing institution charged $185. Right? Like, thank you very much. Goodbye. We've upped our admin fees. Right? Exactly. Everything is higher.
They changed the rules. They changed the moving the goalposts. But you know what? With printed dollars, manipulating those statistics, precious metals tell the truth. They've been around for thousands of years. They hold real value in these terms, regardless of political spin, political parties, left or right, red or blue, central bank narratives. It's not just a hedge. It's a stand for financial honesty in this age of distortion and distrust. As Bateman mentioned, he's getting into it because of government distrust. When our governments underreport inflation, the best and the most trusted and most reliable store of of our parents' value of their portfolio is physical precious metals, because they cannot be faked, printed, or inflated away. This is money and gold for your golden years.
Look, we've seen great gains in both gold and silver over the last couple years, specifically the first half of this year. Silver's outpaced gold. Wonderful to see. We're seeing examples, not just the recent example with David Bateman, a billionaire buying gold, but silver rather, but we had that other example of someone buying $50 million worth of gold and silver a few years back. So big money starting to come into the market as well. We're seeing states, one by one, it appears, moving towards legalizing gold and silver and going back to constitutional money. Jerry, you mentioned it's not just going back to constitutional money. This goes back to biblical days of what money really is. And at the end of the day, I love the idea that gold is truth, silver is truth. It's monetary truth, and it is slow to eventually get its justice. But you're starting to see that happen in the gold and silver market these days, and it's been wonderful to see. So if you're looking to diversify a portfolio and you haven't gotten into the gold and silver market, we encourage you to give us a call at 1-877-8-SILVER and the website guildhallwealth.com. We'll show you how to do it. We walk you through the process. We're very hands-on. We've got a team of service-minded people here at Guildhall, and our goal is to help educate you and show you how to be successful in the gold and silver market. So I want to thank you, Jerry. I want to thank our audience for joining us again this week, and we can't wait to speak to you next week here on The Real Money Show on 640 Toronto.